we're in here. I'm going to work straight out of our main program file here. And let's come over onto the right. You notice we're in our instructions palette, and we're going to pull up timer operations. And you see these little things that look like kind of blocks, you know, they kind of look like function blocks. That's because they are function blocks. So rather than have one kind of timer that looks a certain way in ladder logic and another kind of timer that looks a certain way in the function block diagram, well, it's kind of just the same thing, and it really does make a lot of sense. So let's go and see what we've got. We've got a timer that generates a pulse. We've got a timer that just generates a delay, so it waits for a little while and then it starts. We've got a timer that basically does the opposite. It shuts off after a certain amount of time. And then we've got a retentive timer here, which accumulates time. We're going to explore all of those, and then below here we've got some different instructions which are used to interact with existing timers, and we'll go ahead and cover probably all of that, if not most of that as well. So let's jump in here and let's start with a pulse timer. And when we create this, it's looking for a name and it's going to create its own data block. So we'll just call this pulse timer. Nice and simple. Hit OK. And I'm going to use 4 different networks for these timers. So let's go ahead and bring an on delay timer here, and we'll call this TON timer. Okay, we like it. Keep going down, and I'm just going to go ahead and hide this properties palette down there for the time being. Let's bring our off timer, and that'll be TOF timer. And one more. Let's bring our retentive timer down here. Very important, especially when we're programming something like an hour meter. And we'll call that retentive timer RTO TIMER. Okay. Jumping back in here, you notice all of these timers kind of look pretty similar. And that's a good thing. We want that because that makes it easier to learn, right? So right here on this input, coming in, the timer wants to have something to the left of this in. So if I tried to compile a timer without something over here on the end, it's going to say, no, I'm not going to let you create a timer that just runs all the time. You need something that controls this timer. So for each one of these, we're going to need some kind of conditional operator here. Hey, that's not where I wanted that to go. And for me, I'm just going to be real simple and use these normally open contacts. Is that? Yeah, normally open. And we'll call this timer switch, because that's the switch that we're going to throw to make our timer come on. So let's define that. And you know what? We can just make that a local temp. That's not something we need to really be, you know, writing all over the place, is it? I don't think so. So how did that get down there? That's not even where I wanted that. So let's get rid of that extra branch. Those won't compile if we've got those extra branches floating around. Okay. So now we have conditions on all 4 of our timers. What else do we need? This PT right here, that's a preset time. So we need some value of time that this timer is going to run for. And I'm going to go ahead and show you how to write time values in this environment. Okay, so to indicate that something is time, we're going to use capital T pound 1H underscore 2M underscore 3S underscore 4MS. And when I hit enter, you see it accepts that value and it's blue and it doesn't have any problem with it. And when I hover over it, it recognizes that that's time. Well, we're not going to be sitting here watching this stuff run for that long. So I'm going to change this time value and let's just make it something like 10S. Okay, so T # 10S. And just like that, I've got a 10-second timer. And then over here at Q, this needs something to the right, because this is basically saying, okay, once I expire, I need to be controlling something. Something over here needs to happen. And typically that's going to be an assignment. So I'm going to call this T1 out. And we'll go ahead and I'll define that as global. So global memory. Perfect. So now the timer actually has something to control. And then you see this ET right here. That's our elapsed time. So if we want to record how much time has passed while this timer is running, we can put a tag in there to hold time. But we are not obligated to do so. Okay, very important. We can, but we don't have to. That's nice. Well, for now, I'm going to go ahead and copy our assignment here, and I'm just going to paste that down, and then I'm going to change the tags on that. So we're going to have a T2 out. We'll make that our T3 out. And last but not least, we've got our T4. And then we need to define these tags. So global memory, define, right click, define tag. Global memory, define, right click, define tag, global memory, define. Okay. So just like that, we've got some timers set up. And this timer will run. And these other ones don't have a time value yet. So I'm just going to copy that 10 seconds and paste that into all of these. No reason to get real creative. Now, what about catching our elapsed time? Well, again, that is not obligatory, but just for fun, let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to have ET1 be a tag name, ET2, ET3, and one more ET4. And watch what happens when I go to define these tags. I'm going to set these up as global, and you see the data type is time, and I can also store this as an int or a word. But I'm just going to leave this as time. Alright, so define tag, global memory, and I'm going to be a little bit creative here. I'm going to store this one as a word, come up to this one, define tag, store this one as an int, and define tag, and I'll just go ahead and leave this one as time. And make that global. And actually this one, I don't think I set that one up the way I wanted to. So let's try that again. Let's go up here. I'm just going to pull this down a little bit, and I'm going to delete that ET2. That's where our local variables are hidden. So there we go. Now I can define that anew. And I can make that global memory like I wanted to in the first place. And this one I wanted to be an int. Define. Okay, good. Now there's one more thing on our timers to set. Check this out down here. This retentive timer also has an R. And that R is a reset. And that's something that we do need to set. So let's go ahead and call that T4 reset, and define the tag. We'll leave that as a local bool. That's not a problem. And for a retentive timer, you know, 10 seconds really isn't very generous. So I'll go ahead and make that something like 2 minutes. Okay, better.